very knowledgeable. Here's Saul, and he's going to talk about all of the different programs that you can bring to your library.
Thank you, Fathi. Thank you. My lecture normally takes 90 minutes, including Q&A. So I'll give you a quick background of myself, and my brochures are available on the table. I was born in Baghdad. I'm of the Jewish faith, and at age 10, I escaped, ending up in Israel. Then later on, I went to Brazil, where I lived for a couple of years. Then I came on a student visa. I ran out of money, and then I joined the U.S. Army. I was promised if I joined for 3 years, I will have free college education. So within 6 months of basic training, I was sent to South Korea. I was into helicopters, and my division was the first one sent to Vietnam. The story is very intricate. A short version of it, 16 pages, on my internet. I have written 5 books. I retired 14 years ago to write my memoirs, ended up writing 5 books and go on lecture tours, and I've been lecturing for the last 12 years. Inside the brochure you'll find 154 different subjects that I lecture about. I have lectured at 44 different libraries, 3 universities, about 50 assisted living places, and so forth and so on. And my lecture schedule is also on the internet. Fathi was nice enough to select one of my lectures called lecture number 10. Also, you have a copy of it on the table. It's called Great Women in World History. That lecture is, again, 90 minutes. It covers 9 different women in chronological order, beginning with Sarah, who was the wife of Abraham 4,000 years ago. And it ends up with Golda Meir 50 years ago. So it is a biography of these 9 women: Sarah, wife of Abraham; Mary, mother of Jesus; Cleopatra, queen of Egypt; Khadija, the first wife of Muhammad; Joan of Arc, great leader that created the French Empire; Catherine the Great; Victoria; Indira Gandhi; and Golda Meir. In each case, I give a handout which covers the entire subject that I speak about, and allow for 15 minutes of Q&A. I also give you the option of writing me. There's an email address, and I promise to answer every one of them. So just to expound a little bit about the lecture, number 10. Sarah was the wife of Abraham. Abraham and Sarah were in their 90s when there was a great drought in the cities very much near where I was born in Baghdad 4,000 years later. And they immigrated to northern Israel, and they had to fight their way and buy pieces of land and so forth. One of the great problems they had is that they were very wealthy in terms of possessions, especially animals, and they needed a place where there's plenty of drinking water, which they settled on in northern Israel near the Kinneret. However, they had no children, and the greatest interest at that time is to have a child so that it can carry your name and also earn your possessions. But carrying the name is almost tantamount to not dying, because someone is carrying your name. So it's very important to have a son. And Sarah, not having any children in her 90s, allowed her husband Abraham to sleep with her maid so that she can have a child. He did, and Ishmael was born a year later. However, she was still very unhappy, and because Abraham discovered the idea of monotheism, the belief in one God, unreachable, undescribable, and so forth, she began praying to him. And you have to allow for the possibility of miracles if you believe in the Bible. And so she was alerted that she will be giving birth, and she gave birth to Isaac. When she gave birth to Isaac, she felt still very unhappy. Some of us historians believe that because Abraham continued his relationship with his young maid. And so she kind of convinced Abraham, for the sake of family peace, to throw them out of the house. And so Abraham took the maid and her son into the desert and abandoned them there, and everybody expected that they would die of thirst and the heat. And the Bible stops telling any further story about them. About 1700 years later, Muhammad was born, and Muhammad became a prophet, and he wanted to establish his credibility with his people, and he did not want to be pointed as just someone who popped out of the desert, illiterate, does not know much, not educated, and so forth, and nobody would listen to him. So he adopted that Ishmael was really the father of the Arabian people, and that brought him all the way back to Abraham lineage. And that's one of the reasons why the name Abraham is the second most important name in the Arabic language after Muhammad. Most family would name the firstborn boy Muhammad, but the second is Abraham. So this was, in a nutshell, what culminated in three religions that are considered true monotheism: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all believing in the Abrahamic religion. Today they constitute nearly, in fact, a little over 1/3 of the world population. So, if I may speak about Golda Meir a little bit, because I have to skip, I cannot fill all this information in 15 minutes. Golda Meir was born in the Ukraine when the Ukraine belonged to Russia, so she considered herself Russian. Most of the Zionists in Israel before the establishment of the state were actually from Russia or Poland, and they immigrated to Palestine about 50 to 100 years before the establishment in 1948. And she was a Zionist because she witnessed pogroms and problems with the Russians attacking their villages and so forth. And her father ended up coming to the United States and got a job in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He then brought the family back over there, and she finished high school there and began teaching school. At that time, you did not need a master's degree to teach school. She ended up working for some labor movement for youth, and she was a very excellent speaker, and she met her future husband by the name of Meyerson, who proposed to her, and she made one condition, that if he allowed her to move into Israel together with him, she would marry him. He agreed. They moved to Israel. Again, there's a lot of nuances, a lot of stories and so forth, but she ended up to be the Prime Minister of Israel, a nuclear power country, and her legacy hung on something very, very important, unfortunately negative, because of the Yom Kippur War in 1973. Just like the Nixon saga, she had a similar situation which she has to come from under, and she ended up writing a very interesting memoir called My Life, I recommend it if you can have a copy of it. As far as Cleopatra is concerned, she was elected 5 times to be a Prime Minister of India, when India was only about 700 million. Today they're at 1.2 billion. They are the 2nd largest population in the world and the 7th largest in terms of territory. Indira Gandhi married the son of the great Gandhi. That's how she got that name. And at one time, there was so much discourse between the various factions within India. India had about 100 different religions. Each one had leaders, had temples, had money or poverty, so forth and so on. And she had a particular problem with the Sikhs. And the Sikhs were very powerful, very militaristic at the time, and they would commit real atrocities in public, especially against the Muslim population, and they would run into their temples, and nobody would pursue them into the temples. Well, when she was in her 4th term, the Sikhs committed terrible things and ran into the temple. She ordered the army to go after them. They went in there, and the great temple of the Sikhs went on fire. The Sikhs decided revenge must be taken on her, ended up assassinating her, and she was, of course, cremated for the Hindu religion. Again, every one of these women have had dozens, maybe even hundreds of books written about them, and I'm sure that